This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, anyone, any questions, guys, before we can get started? Anyone, any questions that I can take? Okay, so let's see what we have for today. So let me open up my drawing board and let's start this out. All right, so let's see. So in the previous sessions, this is what I was doing. So I had let's say my laptop or a virtual machine. I had some code, which is nothing but the .NET Core application out here, and I had a Docker file, and I use this particular Docker file in order to, let's say, go ahead and build an image. And from that particular image, we were going in and creating a container and running this container probably on an app service or something like that. And before we even create the container, we are now also introducing something like a container registry, an ACR, where we are storing all these things out. We are storing all the images out so that we can version control it so that the images cannot be lost and all that stuff. And then from there we are going ahead pulling the container, and then we are running this particular container on, let's say, something like an app service or something like that. So it all starts from Docker file and then image, then they're storing the image, let's say, into the container registry, and then running the container on top of a platform like an app service or something like this. You can go ahead and run this on an app service or a virtual machine, platform of your choice. This is what we were doing in the, let's say, in the last session, in the last sessions out there. Now what I want to do is that I completely want to eliminate the use of my local machine. I don't want to do this. So again, same thing, I have a code and I have my Docker file and I have my Docker file. I will store both of them into my Azure repository. So this is where I'm getting my DevOps practice once again. So I'm saying I have the code, I have the Docker file. I'll take this both and store it inside, let's say, the Azure repository out here. Apart from this, I will also go ahead and write an ARM template. ARM template to go ahead and, let's say, create my Azure container registry out here. I'll also go ahead and save this ARM template out here, and using a pipeline. This is where I'm getting in my DevOps practice. Using a pipeline, what I would do is that I would go ahead, create the registry firstly, because I'll try to create the registry. And then using this Docker file, I would go ahead and convert this code into an image. And all of this I'm trying to do with the pipeline only. I'm not even touching my local machine anywhere. So I have the sources, which is the code, Docker file, and also the ARM template. I will make sure that I push everything inside my my Azure repository out here. And using my pipeline, I would want to create firstly the Azure container registry. Secondly, I would want to go ahead and store that particular image inside the container registry. So store this image inside the registry out here. So multiple things. This is what I want to now go ahead and start, get doing. So in order to do this again, we need some sources. Same thing. I need a code and I also need the Docker file for that particular code. So firstly, you can get the code here in this particular link. I'll again post this out. I don't know how many people have this or how many people don't have this out. So this is the link that I have for the code. So you can go ahead and download this particular code out here. And you would be able to see, let's say, that this is getting downloaded in the form of a zip format. All right, so let me open that zip format and let me place it inside a folder. and let me take all that I need and place it inside a folder out here. So let's see. So this is the downloads and this is the zip that I have. Copy this out, go into a different folder out here, create a folder and place this out. So I'll do this and I'll just extract this out. I'll say yes, please extract this. And once you extract this out, I have in my junk, I have a folder called Docker sample, inside which I have just my application. Again, I'm not building my application like I did earlier. I'm not building my application out here. I just have the very bare basic code. And inside this bare basic code, if you see, you also have a Docker file here. So I have also placed a Docker file inside this. Okay, why is this okay? Where is the Docker file? Okay, fine. So let's see, not this one. Let's see, where did I extract this out? Docker sample, Docker sample app. Where I place this? Let's see, Docker core sample app. Yes, so I have a, let's say, a Docker file as well. But let's see, I have a Docker file. Yes, I have a Docker file. Strange. Fine. So if I just open this out in, let's say, something like a Visual Studio. Let me open out this one in a Visual Studio. Let's understand what the code really is and what kind of changes do you need to make in this particular code. Again, so all this is my code, and it's completely developed in, let's say, .NET Core 3.1. I also have a Docker file associated with this particular code. And again, I just downloaded this file, or I just took this file from, let's say, the Docker documentations out here. I did not do anything really different out there. I just went into the Docker documentation and I took this file, and these are all the contents of the file. So very simple. This is what it's trying to do. Instead of you going ahead and doing a .NET build, .NET publish, .NET restore, and etc. on an Azure DevOps pipeline. So normally what we do is that if we have an Azure DevOps pipeline, if we have the code, we simply go ahead and now try to perform something like .NET restore, .NET build, and all that stuff, right? Now I am not doing that anymore. If I have the Docker file, I am passing all those instructions inside the Docker file. So if you see this, I am telling, please go ahead, run a .NET restore. Please go ahead, run a, let's say, .NET publish, and you will get all the binaries. And then go ahead and build the image. So this was very similar to what we did earlier. Just go ahead and get that particular, let's say, 3.1 runtime, use something called as a working directory, and copy every contents out here. And then we are going ahead and exposing the entry point. So we are going ahead, doing an image build and an image publish out here. And then we are going ahead and converting the entire converting the entire code into an image in these steps. So we are doing two things. So instead of, let's say, me going ahead into the pipeline and telling, okay, do a build or do a restore or do publish, I'm giving all the instructions in this file only. So what this is going to do is that this is simply going to go inside the application, do a restore. It will target this file because here I'm just copying one particular file called docker sample app.cs project file. I'm taking this and I'm telling please go ahead and run this particular restore out here. And in case if you want to use this file, you have your own application. You just need to change the name of your application out here and also here. That's it. That's the only change that you need to do. So I have the Docker file, I have the code. Now what I'm going to do is that in this particular folder, so this is all my folder out here. So this is all the solution file. I'll also go ahead and create one more folder called infrastructure. to go ahead and create my Azure Container Registry. So I'll say create a folder. I'll say infra ACR or something like that, infra ACR, something like this. And I'll make sure to go ahead and build in or make sure to create the template for Azure Container Registry using my ARM knowledge. Again, this is something that you can do with Terraform or ARM. You're free to do with anything. What I'm going to do right now is I'll just go ahead and say Control N, and I'll start my ARM templates out here. I'll say Azure Resource Manager templates. So this is now going to go ahead and start my ARM. So if I say ARM exclamation, this is going to give me a blank file. And I just want to create an Azure Container Registry using these particular templates. So if I come here and just wait for a minute to load the entire schemas, it'll go ahead and start loading all the schemas so that I can go ahead and create a simple container registry out here. So let's wait for that to happen. It will take like a minute or so. And once that's loaded, I'll go ahead and create my ARM template. So I have the code. So this is all what I have. Let me copy it all in a notepad. I have the code. Plus I also have the Docker file for the code. And inside the Docker file, I have instructions like do a .NET restore, do a .NET publish. I'm telling everything to my Docker, and I'm then going ahead and creating an image here only. And even before I do this, I'm now telling I'll come with an ARM template to go ahead and build an Azure Container Registry. Build a container registry out here. This is what I'm now telling is that okay, fine, you know what? I will build the ACR and then I'll go ahead, do a Docker, let's say a Docker file out here and do a restore and a build. After I have my binaries, I'll go ahead, do an image push. So the end goal of the pipeline or the end result of this pipeline is that I want to go ahead and create the image and store the image into let's say an Azure Container Registry out here. So I'll say ARM hyphen container registry. So the second one, container registry out here. So it's asking what is the name of the container registry. And what I'll do here is that I'll create a parameter inside my ARM template telling it is ACR name, something like this. Type is a string, and I'll just replace this with that particular parameter. I'll say parameter ACR name. So I'm just calling that particular parameter out here. Then I have the type. Here it is telling it is container registries out here. API version, I'm good with that. Resource group location, wherever the resource group is created, please go ahead and do that. And here the SKU, I'll say it is a basic, and I'll say admin user, please enable the same, and that's it. Nothing different, nothing let's say complicated in this template. Very simple template. Just going and creating the ACR with an SKU called basic. You can also do it a standard or a premium out here. And I'm enabling something called as an administrator user out here, and I'll save this out. I'll save this as JSON. I'll say ARM template.json. So I have two things. One is the code. The second one is the infrastructure there. Now what I'm going to do is I have this code in the infrastructure. I now go into dev.azure.com into my Azure DevOps out here, and let's go ahead and use one of the projects. Like I don't let's do this. Let's take this project, and in here I'll create a repository. I'll say new repository. I'll say Docker ACR demo repo, some name. I'll create this out. I'll clone my repository into my local machine using VS Code again. So I'll clone this entire repository and I'll copy two things in this repository. One, the code and the Docker file that is inside the code. Two is the infrastructure or the ARM templates that I do have out here. So one is the Docker file. One, let's say, is the Docker files and the code out there. And the second one is, let's say, the ARM templates is what I can copy here. So what I'll do is just go into, let's say, the folder again. So this is the Docker .NET Core sample app. I'll copy this out, and I'll also copy my infrastructure folders. Firstly, let me do one thing. Okay. So this is the Docker sample. I also have the infrastructure, and I have also pasted out this one here in Docker demo, Docker ACR demo out here, which should be somewhere here. Docker ACR demo, yes, this one. So this is my infrastructure wherein I have the ARM template. I'll copy this out, paste it here inside this particular Docker ACR demo, because this is the folder which is being now tracked by Git. The second one, I'll also get the code, which is that Docker sample app and so on and so forth. So this is my code. I have the Docker file also. So I'll copy this entire folder of the code and paste it inside the Docker ACR demo. So both the code plus Docker file and also the infrastructure, which is the ARM templates, everything is there now inside this particular folder. I don't need this particular README file, so I can delete this out. So now I have a couple of things right now that I already did. So my code and all these things, I've committed it out to, or I've posted it or pasted it inside the repository folder. It's being tracked by Git, and Git is now telling that, you know what, you have so many changes that you want to, do you want to, let's say, go ahead and do a commit? I'll say yes, but before committing, I'll stage all the changes. I'll say yes, all these things are staged. I'll say this is adding Docker file and the code. I'll say commit again. I am committing this on the main branch. But if you alternatively, if you don't want to do that, if you want to, let's say, go ahead and create a development branch and then push it out, you can also do that. We'll do that also. I'll say commit. And before racing the changes, I'll say create a new branch from. I'll say develop. I'll say please create it from the main branch. Now I'll go ahead and publish this out. And you can also go ahead and make sure, the recommended practice out here is to make sure that, so if I have a develop branch and inside the develop branch I have these things out, and as a DevOps engineer you need to make sure to protect this branch by using the branch policies. So I'll put some branch policies here telling that, okay, fine, this is required number of reviewers. I'll say this is one. I'll just put one simple policy out here so that the branch is protected. So the branch now gets protected out here. So if I go into the branch is protected, which means that no developer or no DevOps engineer can directly go ahead and, let's say, commit anything out here as such. So after my initial push, I committed my branch and all that stuff. So let me go ahead now, go into the pipelines and see new pipeline. I'll start with classic editor. I'll say use classic editor right now. And once I start with classic editor, it's telling me where is your code, where is your, let's say, where is all your stuff. I'll say yes, all those code, all those things are inside my repository. So I'll point it out to that particular repository called Docker demo ACR and the develop branch of this particular repository. I'll say here is where everything is there. I'll say continue. And here what I'll do is that instead of telling empty job, now earlier we used to, let's say, go ahead and select ASP.NET Core in order to go ahead and do that entire build and, let's say, produce the artifact. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna say Docker. Here it is telling Docker container, build a Docker image and push it to the container registry. I'll say yes, this is what I wanna do. I'll say apply. And here it's telling what is the image specification, the agent specification. Since I'm going ahead and trying to build a Linux image, I'll say it is Ubuntu latest. Whatever is the latest version of Ubuntu, please go ahead. I'll say this is a Docker sample app build, some name out here. There are simple two steps, guys. Build an image, push an image. That's it. And if I go into one of the steps, right, for example, to build an image, it's telling, okay, fine, build an image uh, and into the container registry using a service connection, like something like a service connection out here. And after, as and when you do a service connection, it'll tell, okay, fine, where is your ACR? Tell me where is your ACR out here. I don't have one yet because my portal is empty, nothing that I've created. So now telling, okay, fine, where is your ACR? Can you give me your ACR out here? I'll say yes. Before I go ahead and do this, I'll add one more step here, telling ARM templates, ARM template deployment. So I'll go ahead and say, okay, fine, resource group. I'll say DevOps SVC subscription out here would be okay, fine. I don't think I have a service connection out here at all. So available Azure connections, there's no service connection. Great. So let me do one thing. Let me quickly create a service connection so that I can, make use of it. Or if I have an existing service connection, I can just share this out with this particular subscription. Let's check this out. I think I should have something here inside the service connections. Let's see, because I cleared off all my service connection out here. So yes, I have a service connection. I will just go ahead and share this particular service connection into that particular project as well. Okay, cool. So what I'll do is that I'll just refresh this out. And since I shared the service connection, let me see this. Should be able to load the existing service connections right now. So let me give it a second. Let me refresh this and test. Yes. So I have this particular service connection right now. Let's see if this exists. It's still saying no subscriptions found. Let's see if my subscription is active or not. Subscription is active. So I think I don't have a service connection out here right now. So I'll just go ahead and create a service connection rather. So I'll say Azure Service Principal manual, and it's going to ask me all these details. So I'll have to provide all these details out here. Firstly, I'll go ahead and give my subscription ID. I'll give the name of the subscription, the service principal ID, which I don't have. So I'll just go ahead and use an existing service principal ID that I do have out here. So I have the app registrations, and inside that I should have a good amount of service connections out here. See if you see, a lot of things have been expired at my end. So let's look at, let's say, the sample learning DevOps, which is active. I'll add one more secret here, telling test secret. Once I add this, I'll just take, let's say, the password of this particular secret out here, store it inside something like this. I'll just store here and go into the overview, get the service principal ID, place it here, service principal key, the one that I just copied, tenant ID. I will get the tenant ID here, directory ID of the tenant ID, and I'll say this is a test connection and access, and I'll say verify. So verification is successful. I'll say verify and save this out, and I'll use the test connection out here, and I'll just go ahead and try to, let's just see my subscription. So it should be able to show you the subscription. If it's not, then the service connection might have been expired. So that's the reason I quickly went ahead and created a new one out there. So here in the ARM template deployment, it's telling create or update the resource group. It's asking the resource group name. I'll use variables right now. I'll say RG name. I'll say something like dev RG. I'll say this is the name of the RG, and I'll call my variable here using dollar open close RG name. So I'll just call my particular variable using that dollar open close, and let's say giving the RG name out there. I'll say it's in ECS2. I want to create this in ECS2. If I just scroll down, it's telling me where is your ARM template. I'll click on this and this is my ARM template out here. And in my ARM template, I have one particular parameter that I need to pass, which is the ACR name. So I'll say dollar open close ACR name, and I'll declare a name out here. I'll say demo DevOps ACR UCs2, something like this is the name of the ACR, and that's the only thing that I need. So this will create an ACR with this particular name here, which is nothing but the ACR name, which is dollar $ACR name out here. And then I'm going to build the image, and in here again I will say yes, this is Azure Container Registry. I can also go ahead and put it inside a Docker registry out here. I'll use the connection called test connection. I'll again, if you check this out, there is no container registry. It's telling please go ahead pass a container registry name out here. So I'll say it is ACR name, the one that I passed, dot azure.cr.io. The fully qualified domain name is what this is expecting. So the ACR name dot azure.cr.io. I just scroll down, and here it's telling me okay fine, build an image, and it's telling me where is your image, what is the name of the image. I'll say okay fine, where is the Docker file. So I'll say this is my Docker file. Just go here and look for a Docker file out here. I'm pointing it out to the Docker file. It's asking me build arguments, nothing. It's now telling what is your image name. So what I'll do, instead of here, I'll just go ahead and say it is an image name, and I'll again declare a variable for the image name out here as such. So I'll say variables, image name. I'll say .NET Core image. Again, I want to be producing multiple copies of this image. So what I do here is that along with the image name, I'm passing a predefined variable called build.buildID. So whenever I create a build pipeline, it will generate an ID, a unique ID every time. So I'm just copying that particular ID. I'm just calling that particular ID out here, and making sure that I have this particular, let's say, build tag out here as such. I'll say just include the source tags. I'm good with this. And after that, I'll go into, let's say, push the image. So this is going to just build the image. It's just going to build your image. Second thing, I want to push the image into let's say the ACR that I have. So again, I'll say it is test connection. Again, for the registry, I in which ways had a registry here, right? So I'll just copy this out. This here for the container registry. The name of the image, same thing. I'll copy it from here. Paste the name of the registry or paste the name of the image here. Include the source tags, and that's it. My pipeline is done. Three simple steps to replace everything that we were doing till now on the local machine. I'm not installing Dockers, nothing. Everything is now taken care by my pipeline. I'll save and queue this out. I'll say yes, this is the develop branch. I'll say first run, and I'll save and run. So as I do that, it's now going to go ahead and trigger an Azure DevOps build pipeline, which is going to do a couple of things honestly. Firstly, it's going to identify whether I have the resource groups, and it'll tell okay fine, there is no resource group called devrg. Let me go ahead and create that. So as a part of this particular process, it's going to now go ahead and say okay fine, you know what, the resource group called devrg, this doesn't exist. Let me go ahead and build it for you. So it's telling okay fine, I'll use that particular template, and I'm now going ahead and starting a build. So it's telling okay fine, I'll start a build, and as a or I'll start, let's say, this particular ARM build out here, and as a part of this one, I will go ahead and create you firstly a resource group called devrg, which will take some time to appear here. And after that, I'll go ahead and create the ARM template itself. And as a part of the ARM template, I'm just going ahead creating an Azure container registry. So if you see this, it's telling yes, this is done. So if I refresh the screen, I have a devrg inside which I now have a container registry that I built. After that, I'm now pointing out where my Docker file is. It's telling, okay, fine, I understand this is your Docker file, and there are multiple steps inside the Docker file. So it's telling, okay, fine, for step 1 of the 14, I'll just go ahead and let's say pull this particular image firstly. So it's telling, yes, I'll go ahead and pull all that particular image. Good enough. And after that, I'll just scroll down. So if you see this, it's telling yes, this is the image that I'm pulling out. And if I just scroll down, it's telling okay, fine, you know what, there are multiple steps here to build the image. And it will not only build the image, guys. If you just scroll down, it's running all your steps. After it runs your steps, it will also tag your image along with the name of your registry plus the ID of the build pipeline. So this is your build ID. So if you see this right in my browser, I have a build ID out here as such. There's something called build ID. If you see in the link, which is 380, and I'm using a variable called build.build ID, and it's getting that particular ID and it's tagging that image with that particular ID out here as such. So it's going ahead doing all these things. So let's give it a second. And after that, it's also going ahead and doing a push. It's telling yes, I'm also going ahead and doing a push out here into, let's say, that particular container registry. It's preparing and it's telling okay, fine, I pushed all the layers out here as such. So it pushed all those layers into the container registry. And if you go back into the registry, and if you go into the repositories out here, I now have a .NET Core image and I have the version called 380 for this one. The reason I got 380 here is because the name of the image is something like this. It's Docker image, something like that, and the tag here is coming from the build ID. So this is how it's going ahead and let's say doing a build. And now if I want to further automate this out, I'll say edit this pipeline. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me close this and open this out. Okay. If I want to further automate it, I'll say edit this out. I'll go into the variable section. Sorry, I'll go into the trigger section. I'll say enable continuous integration. Whenever you have some change on that particular repository, enable the continuous integration. So I'll say save, enabled continuous integration trigger. Now let's see. As a developer, I come here and I'll say, okay, fine, this is my Docker sample application. So I'll go ahead and create a feature branch. Run .NET test, something like this. I'll say create. We'll go into the sample application, go into, let's say, the pages of this particular sample application. Let's say I make some change in this particular page called ASP.NET. I'll say containerized application. This is version 2. It's a simple change. As a developer, again, of course, you might have a lot of changes that you can, let's say, implement. And now after this change is done, I'll create a pull request into the develop branch of my repository. And I'll say yes, create the pull request out here. It's checking for merge conflicts. It's telling yes, you need one particular person to approve this out. I'll set this to auto complete and I'll approve my pull request out here. As and when I approve my pull request, it's merging my PR inside the branch called develop branch. And as and when it merges the PR, it automatically kicked off another build whose ID is 381. The build ID now is 381 out here as such. And if I now open this out, it's again doing the same thing. It's trying to check whether the ACR is there or not. It'll say yes, it'll take like a minute or so. It'll check whether your entire infrastructure is there or not. It'll move forward if it's already there. After that, it'll build a new image because your code has changed and then push that particular new image with a new tag out there. So it'll still be a .NET image out there. The repository name will still be .NET image, but inside that you will have one more image ID with or one more image with the ID called 381 out here as such. So this is what it's now doing. So it's telling okay, fine, yes, I'm building this out. So ACR is done, took around 34 seconds. Now it's going in and telling okay, fine, now I'll go ahead and do a build. And now it's telling okay, fine, let me rerun the entire steps again. Let me go ahead and rerun all those things again that I have. So it's telling okay, fine, it is .NET 6 that I have. I'm using that and it's taking multiple steps out here. And it's going ahead and doing a build out here of the image. So a new copy of the image is being produced and the image will again be tagged with the name of the build ID or with the number of the build ID. So if I just give it a second, it will go ahead execute all these steps that are there in my, let's say, Docker file. And once that's done, it's now telling, okay, fine, yes, this is the repository name or the registry name, inside which this is the name of the repository, which is .NET Core image with the ID of the build 381, and it's taking now the entire thing and pushing it back into the registry. Now, if I go here, if I refresh, I now have a 381 ID out here as such. That is on top of, let's say, my 380. So I have my build, I have my Docker images and all these things. I produced all these things using an Azure DevOps pipeline. And finally, if you want to run this out, I can say, okay, fine, I want to create an app service probably. Or if you have a virtual machine, you can pull that into the virtual machine. So I'll say, yes, this is the resource group dev.rg. I can go here. I can say the name of the app services or DevOps container app, something like that. And I'll say, instead of code, I'll say it's a Docker container, Linux. I'll say it's ECS2. I'll use the default plan. I'm good with that. I'll say it is a single container, Azure Container Registry, and it's telling, yes, this is the container registry that you do have in the same location. Do you want to pull the image? I'll say yes, with the latest tag called 381. So I'll say, okay, fine, please take the latest 381 out there. And I'll just go ahead and say, okay, fine, I'll switch off all these monitoring and all that stuff. And I'll say review and create. So whatever, again, even this can be done via the DevOps pipeline, but I'm just doing this manually right now to explain how the process is going around. I'll say create, and creation is now done. Now I have this one. So extension here is that I have the image. I'm now pulling this particular image inside the app service, and I'm running that particular image out of the app service that I do have. So I have all these things. I have the app service also. I'm now pulling that inside the app service, and all these things is something that I'm now trying to, let's say, achieve using a DevOps practice. I am eliminating the manual approach out here, wherein I'm telling manually I'm trying to build the code and etc. Or I went ahead and used the virtual machine to build all these things. Now I'm telling, okay, fine. Instead of doing it manually, I want to do this using, let's say, a pipeline out here, and I'm approaching it via a pipeline to go ahead and build and store my images out here as such. And I'm finally pulling those images inside my app service. And if I browse my app service, it should load. It'll take some time to load. And I'll say this is the version 1 of my application, and so on and so forth. So this is how I made sure that I pull all that stuff into, let's say, that particular application, and I'm running it out of that particular application out here as such. So yes, any questions till here? Anyone? Any questions that I can take till you on what did we do again? Just to write down the steps, I created an ARM template, add the code and the Docker file. So Docker file plus the code, pushed everything, all these into Azure repos, implemented branch policies. So that created a build pipeline. Use the service connection in order to tell, okay, fine, what is the subscription and all these things out. And the build pipeline had 3 steps: infrastructure creation, which is nothing but the ACR. After that, image build process, and after that, image push. So these are the multiple things that I went ahead and I implemented inside my, let's say, pipeline. And after that, I put a continuous integration trigger. I went ahead did a continuous integration trigger, and whenever a developer goes ahead and makes some change of the code, it's just going ahead and doing a build. And instead of, let's say, giving the image as the artifact, which I don't need at all, it's now going ahead and storing this particular image inside the container registry. So more number of times that you run this pipeline again. So if I have a version 3 or something that the developer is now giving me, it will go ahead and again kick off a pipeline, again create a new image copy of it, tag it as 382, store it inside the repository out here as such. So I'll, over a period of time, I'll have, let's say, multiple versions of my image. And I can now choose to tell, okay, fine, which version of the image that I need to run or what kind of an image that I need to run out here as such. Yes, any questions till here? Anyone, any questions that I can take till you? Anyone, any questions, guys?
Here, a release pipeline we should not do so.
You do not need a release pipeline. I mean, if you want to go ahead and do it using a release pipeline, you can copy the ARM templates and take it into the release pipeline. But there is no need for the release pipeline here. You can directly use a build pipeline and kind of get it done. Again, what I want you all to try doing, guys, is that I explained how to do it in, let's say, Classic. I want you to try doing the same thing in YAML, guys. Again, even in YAML, it's like super simple. If you go ahead and let's say start say a new pipeline out here and say Azure DevOps YAML and look for that particular repository. I think it's something like Docker ACR demo, something like that. I'll say start a pipeline, and inside this particular starter pipeline, I have Ubuntu latest. This is good enough. You can just add a stage called build, call your ARM templates and all these things, or very simply, you can go ahead into your classic pipeline, look at the stage, and just let's say get a YAML definition on that particular stage. So either you can do an export YAML, or you can go into each and every step out here, say view YAML, and you can copy this entire YAML out here. You can do that, and there is build image. And if you check this out, nothing but it's taking a step telling that okay fine, this is the Docker task, this is the name. I'll just copy you can just copy and paste this out and create a YAML file out of it. So very simple, you can just take a YAML file out of it and you go ahead and do a build pipeline for the same thing out here. So that's the assignment, is that try doing it in the YAML, because that's where we are heading to. So please try doing all these things in a YAML definition out here as such. What is a gated build? What is a gated build is nothing but PR validation build. That's what I was talking about. Sonar. That's what a gated build really is about. Yes. Anyone? Any more questions?
So if you want
Hmm?
to if you want to deploy in the web app by using infrastructure as a code, you have to do a release pipeline and you have to download the publish artifacts and do an
You
deployment.
don't have to download the published artifacts if you're doing a Docker. So again, very importantly, artifacts only come into picture when I'm pushing the entire code. So if you look at the ARM template for this particular web app, in especially when you are let's say doing a Docker, the entire template is going to look something like this. So I'm just giving you an example of how a template really looks like. So I don't really need now, let's say, a publish artifact, because I'm not publishing any artifact out here, right? Because I am not, let's say, storing my artifacts. I'm storing all these things in the form of, let's say, an image. So all I do in my web application is to point that particular image where it is. That's it. So I'm just pointing it out to that particular image out here as such. So once it generates the template, I can also show you how the template really looks like out here as such. So no need of artifacts. There is no artifact out here. So even if you do an infrastructure of the code, I'm good with that. But you don't have to really point it out to the artifact. You can simply go and write an ARM template in such a way that your application, let me refresh the screen, your application will go ahead and let's say call that particular image directly. So there is no point of artifact out here as such. Again, when you create the application, right, you generate the template, it will give you the ARM template out there. That will give you some, idea on how to go ahead and let's say build this out. It's taking some time here to go ahead and let's say produce a template out. But yes, you can go ahead and do it in that way. Does that answer your question, Pavan? So you don't need the artifact at all. Yes, any more questions, guys? Anyone, any more questions that I can take you?
In the real
I'm
time, so in the Docker's file only will that release and build pipeline will be there.
not really. I did not do a Docker. I mean, I did not do a build and release pipeline inside the Docker file. So if you look at this, there is no release pipeline in the Docker file. There are steps in the Docker file, like what is restore, what is publish. That's it. So I am not doing a pipeline here. I'm doing the steps in the pipeline, and I'm using this particular Docker file in the pipeline. So in the real-time environment, yes, you'll have something like this, a very big Docker file, something like this. Again, this is the, let's say, the file that I got. So it's just going ahead and telling that, okay, fine, if you just scroll down, it'll just tell you that, okay, fine, please go ahead and get something called as an ACR. So I'll say container. It's telling the society, basic policies and all that stuff. Yes, I can give a template for this one. This is a very, very, very basic template. It'll just give you an idea on how to build this out. But I can go ahead and give a template for the same thing out here as such. Yes, any more questions, guys? Even any more questions that I can take here? Okay, so that's it from mine, guys. So have a good day ahead, and we will meet probably sometime this week. I will start with Kubernetes out here with this week out here. Thank you and have a good day ahead. Thanks, guys.